We're going to talk about audacious faith and how people use that today, or how we can use that to make a difference in this world and what it would look like. But in order to know what it looks like today, we got to go back to the past. And I'm going to go back and talk to you about a story that begins. I'm going to start in the book of Matthew. I'm going to be in Matthew 24. It's where I'm going to start, but I'm going to go to Genesis because we're going to go back to the roots. But let me tell you where I'm going to begin this at. I don't know about you, but over the last couple of weeks and months, and it happened 4 years ago or 8 years ago when President Obama went into office and we were electing a president. Everybody was convinced this was the end of times. All kinds of things had happened. This president's going to go in. It's the end of times, this, that, and the other. And they all talked about that. And then, we have tsunamis and hurricanes, and everybody talks about that this is the end of time. And then we come up to this presidential election, and it might very well be the end of time. I'm not sure. But my point is, everybody kept talking about, well, when's the end going to happen? What's going to happen? And in Jesus' day, they did the same thing. His disciples, in fact, talked to him one day, and when's the end of time going to happen? When's this new kingdom going to happen that you keep talking about? And Jesus goes on, he told them some things that were going to be happening and some signs, and then he gets to this one point, and he begins to tell them a particular sign that I'm going to talk about today, and I want to read that to you. It's found in Matthew 24, verse 36 through 39. It says, "But that day or that hour no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father." Notice that Son is capital S. That's talking about himself. He's like, I don't even know when the end is, but I know some things about the end. He goes on to say, For it was in the days of Noah, so as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be in the coming of the Son of Man. So he's like, when I come back, it's going to be like the days of Noah. For in the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage up to the day that Noah entered the ark. And then they knew nothing about what would happen until the flood came and took them away. That is how it's going to be at the coming of the Son of Man. So basically what he's saying, I don't know the exact date, I don't know the exact time, but I do know these things will be happening. These signs will be happening. People will be going about their regular life. People will be doing their regular stuff. People will be eating and drinking and having a good time. They're going to be at Elsom sometimes, and sometimes they're going to be at Nats. They're going to be having a beer after the ball game. And if we don't start playing better, we might have to drink a six-pack after a ball game. But they're going to just be having life. They're just going to be doing life. In fact, they're not even thinking about any of the mess that's going on around them because they're just eating and drinking and having a good time and everything's good. In fact, it says that people are being married and people are giving people away to be married. So I'm thinking about, wonder what that's talking about. I'm thinking, the people that are married are usually young that are getting married, so they're excited about getting married. And what are they thinking about when they're getting married? The marriage night, yeah. See, I know where your mind is. On the front row is where you need to be. I'm telling you, that's where you need to be. Get your mind out of there anyway. So thinking about the honeymoon, and they're thinking about the future. They're thinking about the future. Young people think about the future. They get married. They think about what our relationship's going to be like, what our life's going to be like. Are we going to have 1 kid, 2 kids, or 10 kids until they babysit a little bit, and then they say we don't want any kids. I'm not sure. And then the people who are giving away in marriage are the people who? That's probably the parents. And so the parents are excited because we're getting them out of the house. It's going to be an exciting time. It's going to be, so both the young and the old are looking to the future about what it could be. They're eating and drinking. And then he said it's going to be like Noah. And then the floods are going to come. And they don't know anything is coming until they come. And the flood comes. And the door is sealed shut on the ark and they can't get in. And he said that's the way it's going to be. So I thought today we would spend some time looking at Noah. And we'd look at Noah to see if we can pick through the Scriptures and find some things from the Scriptures that would apply to us today. Maybe there's some insight that God has for you today from what we're about to read. Maybe there's something that you might think you have it all together. And that's a great place to be. But maybe there's some opportunity for God to be a part of your life, for God to be a more integral part of your life. Maybe you've been walking with God for a while. Maybe you're a modern day Noah. I don't know. Or maybe you're more of the eating person. You know, you're just the eater. You're out there eating because that's what was going on that Jesus said. Or maybe you're the drinking person or the partier or whatever. I don't matter where you are, but maybe today God has something that's for you or for me that we may be able to put together that can make a difference in our lives and quite frankly might make a difference in the world. So I'm going to move to Genesis, and I'm going to be in Genesis chapter 6. So this is where you need to be at if you're in your Bible. So if you'll turn to Genesis chapter 6, verse 9 is where I'm going to start with. Verse 9. Okay? This is the account, that's it. This is the account of Noah and his family. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked faithfully with God. Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now, Japheth, is that right? Japheth. All right. See, to me that sounds like the Duck Dynasties guys. You understand what I'm saying? That's Phil is Noah, and he's got, what was Willie and who else? Everybody knows Uncle Si. That's all they know. But Jace and all them. So it's the Duck Dynasty guys, And that's what Noah's got in his family, That's just what they all got long beards. That's just probably the way it was back then. But here's what I want you to draw from this. It says a couple of things about Noah. First thing it says was Noah was a righteous man. Now, I'm not sure what righteous is in your world. I'm not even sure what righteous is in my world these days. I see so many people telling me what's right and what's wrong. Do you understand? And if you listen to what everybody says is right or wrong, you might have all kinds of places you might land on what is righteousness. But here's what I believe. I believe when he says he's a righteous man, he gives 2 things that define what righteous is. It says, first of all, he was blameless among the people of his time. Blameless among the people of his time. That means he's a good fella. You with me? He's a good fella. Noah was a good fella. Nobody had anything against him. He never screwed over anybody for any money. He never took advantage of somebody. He was blameless. People liked him. He's a good fella. Almost like Thomas right there. Old Mr. Thomas back there. Old Pops back there. What do you call him? He's a good fella. Now don't look at that rugged exterior and think that he's not a good fella. You understand? It's a good old fella. Everybody likes him. He's just the toast of the town. Just nobody blames him for anything. But then there's a second part. It says he walked faithfully with God. Walked faithfully with God. So I believe that this begins to be a connection with the first. Walking faithfully with God means you spend time with God. Would you agree with that? Walking with God means you're spending time with Him. You're probably talking and walking and having a conversation. But the thing that I'm thinking about is the word walking. He didn't say standing with God. He didn't say kneeling with God. He didn't say any other thing, but he says this action word. Noah walked faithfully with God. It means he trusted God. Wherever you lead me, whatever we do, we're going to go. It's all good. It doesn't matter what it looks like out here. I'm going to walk with you. But to the world, he was just a good fella. See, that combination, I think, is what makes a righteous person. The combination of being blameless, of not being a jerk to everybody in the world, but also to walk faithfully with God. See, some people in this room, you're good people. You're really good people. You're really nice and kind and generous and do all those things, but there's something that might be missing in your life. It might be, are you walking faithfully with God? Because doing one without the other will not make you a righteous person in God's eyes. If you walk faithfully with God, and you spend your time and you're doing your personal time with God, spending PTWG is what we call it. You're reading the Bible, you're learning, you're growing, but then you don't go and do something with it. And you don't apply it to your life. Then you might be a great person, but you're not walking faithfully with God. Then I would say, from God's perspective, you're not a righteous person. But Noah, he was. Now listen and see what else it says. It says, now the earth, I just gave you this example of Noah. Now we're going to talk about everybody else. It says, now the earth was corrupt in God's sight, and it was full of violence. God saw how corrupt the earth had become, for all the people on earth had corrupted their ways. So God said to Noah, I am going to put an end to all people. What people he's going to put the end to? All people. For the earth is filled with violence because of them. Oh, by the way, the earth is filled with violence because of people, not because of me. Because of people and what they do and their decisions, that's what's going on with the world. That's why the world is, because of people and how they're living and what they're doing. This is what causes violence in the world. So I'm going to destroy both of them and the earth. You see, it was a broken, and it was a culture that was corrupt. It's known to God for violence. It's known to God for destruction. People were destroying relationships with each other. They don't care about you. They don't care about you. It's all about me. In fact, they were destroying relationships with God because they're not listening to God. They're not walking faithfully with God. Two things that were just described that set Noah apart as being righteous. He was blameless among people, and he faithfully walked with God. See, the world wasn't doing that. And when you don't walk faithfully with God, and when you're all about yourself, then it leads to corruption, brokenness, violence. Looks a lot like our world does today, doesn't it? Looks a whole lot like our world today. See, here's the thing I want you to notice from this first part before I go any further. To the people of that time, it ain't a big deal. Hey, every day's like this. Everything's good. What difference does that make? Let me tell you. My thing to you is God's perspective matters. It really doesn't matter whether you think it's that bad or not. It's what God's view of things are. God's perspective matters. And don't you ever forget it. Because when you go before the King of Kings and you go before God and you try to justify what you've done and why you've done it and how you've done it, your perspective is interesting. Your perspective might be very good in some people's eyes. But you better be concerned about what God's perspective is about what you're doing, how you're doing, and living your life. God's perspective matters. And it matters about the choices that you and I make as human beings. The choices that we make, because humans weren't born like this. The violence and the things came by their choices. God's perspective matters. The next thing you need to know out of this is our relationship with God, it matters. Because in this part right here, God's not talking to anyone but Noah. No one else knows. You know why they don't know what's about to happen? Because they don't have a relationship with Him. They're not walking faithfully with Him. They're not spending any time with Him. God is telling Noah what's going to happen. Giving him some details, not maybe all of the details, but enough that he understands what he needs to do and the choices he will be presented and what he can do. By the way, that's the same choices that Jesus had. Jesus had the same choices to do whatever God. He had choices to agree or disagree or to do what God told him to do. He chose to do it. So number one is God's perspective matters. Number two is our relationship with God, it matters. So you can think, oh, I hadn't talked to God in a while. I hadn't spent time with Him. I hadn't been walking with Him. And you can think that doesn't matter. You can think that things are good. And if you go like this karma thought process of, well, bad things happen to bad people or good. You can go through all of this stuff in your mind and you can justify everything. But God's perspective matters. And your relationship with God, it matters. The truth is, for many of us, we don't invest much in either one of those. Let's go on. So God's told him this about the world, and He sets them apart. So He says, I know who you are, and I know this is what the world is. And He goes on, He says, so make yourself an ark. And He goes out and says, make it out of cypress wood. And He goes through this huge detail of it making rooms in it, coat it with pitch inside and out. And He says, this is how you're to build it 300 cubics long, 300 cubics wide, 30 cubics high. Make a roof for it, leaving below the roof an opening. He went through this detail. Then He comes on and He says, I'm going to bring some flood waters. So He tells them, here is the way that we're going to save this. Then He goes on and says, I'm going to bring the flood water. So there's a flood coming. And it's going to destroy life, everything on life under the heavens. Every creature that has breath in it. Everything on earth will perish. Then He says, but I will establish my covenant, my promise with you. You and I, we're going to make an agreement here. You and I, we're going to make a covenant. I'm going to establish a covenant with you, not with everybody else, but with you. And you will enter the ark. This thing that you built, you will enter it, and your sons and your wife will enter it. And your sons' wives will enter it with you. Now, I don't even know if those guys have gotten married yet, but they're going to enter it with him. Then he tells us, I want you to bring in 2 of every kind of creature. I want you to bring in 2 of every kind of animal. I even want you to bring in some extra animals, and I want you to bring in some food, and I want you to have all this stored up on there, because you might be there a while. Didn't tell him how long he was going to be on there. Didn't tell him how many days, how much food. He said, you go get this stuff and get it ready. And then it says in verse 22 of chapter 6, Noah did everything just as God commanded him. Everything. That means he didn't skip this, he didn't skip that. He did everything. Now, here's what the thing is that I want to bring to your attention. Well, let me finish that. I'm going to read 7:1 and 7:6. Here it goes. So after all this is done, he builds the ark. He gets it built. Then the Lord said to Noah, you go in the ark, you and your whole family, because I have found you righteous in this generation. Let me ask you, who went into the ark? Noah and who? His family. His family. Were they all blood kin? No, because the kids married other people. He married somebody that wasn't his sister. But they became part of the family through this marriage, through this covenant, through this connection. And so they went in, and his whole family, because he found Noah righteous. Did that mean that the family was righteous? Did that mean that the family had it all together? Did that mean that his wife never burnt the toast? Did that mean that those children of his and their spouses never had an argument? Never got upset? Never argued over what to do with their finances or how to do everything? You know, what are we going to do with our life? They didn't say they were righteous, did it? But because of Noah's righteousness and their connection to Noah and their connection to that family, they were all put in the ark, and God closed the door. He didn't even close the door. He gets in there, the animals come, they come from all over. Noah did not go with a lasso and a horse and ride around and lasso the dinosaurs or lasso whatever it was, the platypus. Maybe Noah might have wanted to lift some things off the ark. But God, what did you say? Like mosquitoes and gnats and things of that nature, absolutely. But God said, bring 2 of everything on there. And Noah's like, I have no idea what you're going to do with a platypus. I have no idea, but we're going to bring him on there. Whatever it was, it said, and Noah did what God commanded him to. Noah was 600 years old. Now that's old. You getting what I'm saying? 600 years. Now I don't know how they lived to be 600 years, and I'm telling you, I don't believe there's a different calendar they had that time. I don't know. 600 years then, I don't know. God can do that. You and I think it's science that does that. Science and some of the stuff that we eat and some of the stuff we put in our bodies today is probably what's costing us life, and we don't know it. Noah was 600 years old when the flood waters came on earth, and Noah and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives entered the ark and escaped the water. Destruction, to get rid of wickedness, to get rid of evil, to get rid of the violence, to get rid of the selfishness, to get rid of all the things that were destroying God's creation. So here's the next thing I want to tell you. God's perspective matters, and we've all agreed on that. And our relationship with God matters. The next one is you need to understand God has a plan. God has a plan. You may or may not know it, but God has a plan. Don't think because you don't know it doesn't mean that He doesn't have one. God has a plan, and you can, and I hope, are a part of His plan. The truth is, you are a part of that plan, one way or the other. You're either part of the plan that's on the ark, that's floating around on top of the destruction, or you're a part of the plan who's floating around trying to learn to swim for several hundred days with no food and water. You're part of the plan. God has a plan. And let me tell you, in this story right here, remember, this is what Jesus was referring to his followers to say, this is what the end of time looks like. This is what it looks like. In a broken and corrupt culture, known for destruction. Don't we live in that? Let me just say something. How many of you watched any of the presidential debates? Anybody? How many watched more than one? Okay, how many watched 3? Bless your hearts. I couldn't stand but 2 of them. I about lost my mind. Actually, I watched the first one, and after I got over it and skipped the second one, I said, well, maybe they changed. And I went back and watched the third one. Let me tell you something. It is the most embarrassing thing as a member of this United States of America, as a citizen, to say that's the best things that we've got to put up on stage to drive one of the countries that is known as one of the top countries in the world. Because here's what I saw. They weren't talking about what they could do. Their focus by the third debate was destroying the other person, destroying their credibility, destroying who they were, destroying what they'd done and all that. It was about destruction. It was about corruption. Everything in there was about corruption, destruction, and how you trust this, that, and the other. What's the end of times look like? Now, again, we thought this when another election happened. It doesn't matter. My point is, we are one of the leading countries in the world, and everything we do is looked at from every person that can get to a TV or to a cell phone or to an internet site, especially in other countries. And this is what they see us doing back and forth while they have people dying and struggling. In our own country, we have people struggling with drug addiction, sexual addiction, all kinds of things, and yet this is what we see. In a broken and corrupt culture that was known for destruction, let me tell you what Noah didn't do. Noah didn't try to fix the culture. Noah did not try to go out there and change everybody. Noah did not go out there and say, I'm walking with God, I'm walking and doing these things in a faithful relationship. And he didn't go out there to try to force that on everybody else. He didn't go out there and try to change the culture. He didn't go take his sons and say, let's go get a war going and let's fix these people over here. Let's beat it into them. He didn't do that. He didn't try to change the culture. What Noah did, and this is your first fill in the blank, I believe, Noah did something different. Noah did something different. The first thing Noah did that we saw was Noah walked in obedience to God in the midst of corruption. Noah's relationship with God led him to trust God. And through that trust of God, he was able to be obedient to God. Let me tell you, it's hard to be obedient to anybody you don't trust. And we're all about to find that out with either one of these candidates. It's hard to be obedient to someone you don't trust. Noah trusted God. He trusted him. And that trust led to that phrase that said, and Noah did everything that God commanded him. Noah demonstrated audacious faith in God. He built an ark in the middle of a desert or in the middle of dry land. He did something different because God told him to. He said, build this. We need this. This thing that you're building is going to make a difference in the change that I'm about to bring about. The change that many of us are wanting, I'm about to make through your actions. Noah did something different. Noah built while others were destroying. Noah was taking the time as he was being mocked and ridiculed, and as he was doing the things that he was doing to build this ark. You know that people were making fun of him. You know they were. I don't understand how those 3 sons of his got daughters to begin with. Do you understand? Could you imagine being one of those 3 daughters' daddy, and they going out there and they're like building this huge. Now let me tell you, that ark's, it's honking big. Okay, we drew a map of it up here, and it takes up like, I think Chris put it up in the woods over here across the street. There it is. So you see Hurdy Drive is right here. You see Terrell is that road over here. That thing's bigger than this block. That's a stretch if it sit right over there across from us. It'd be sitting right there at that end. I could pan down and look down there, and it'd be down there at that end. That's how big it is. And these nuts are out there building this in the desert. Where do they get wood from? You ever think about that? How many trees does that take? That's a bunch of trees. And Noah wasn't a carpenter. Well, he turned out to be a carpenter. I guess he was. He built this big ark. So these guys have these women they're trying to date. They're going on a date. What are you doing? I finished doing my part on the ark tonight. I'm going to go on a date. Well, good luck with that. Who you going to find to date you? Because you know if I'm a daddy of somebody, Danielle starts dating who's that crazy guy building that ark out there? Well, I'm going on a date with him tonight. Oh, you ain't going to the fair with him. You ain't riding that crazy mouse with that guy. That guy's a nut. Look at them. That whole family. You know what I'd be saying? That whole family is crazy. They cray-cray. Look at them. I mean, do you understand where I'm coming from? But God brought these women to these guys. And they married. And guess what? They cray-cray too, because they help him build the ark. You understand? Because now Noah's wife's building the ark, Noah's son's building the ark, Noah's daughters-in-laws are building the ark. And can you not imagine those girls going, I did not know this is what I was getting into. You told me you were going to love me forever and cherish me and all this stuff, and I'm building an ark. I am so tired. You know, I don't know how it went. I don't know. All I know is, while others were destroying, Noah did something different and he built. Now, let me tell you something about what he did. Noah didn't fit the ark into his life. He fit his life around building the ark. Noah didn't fit the ark into his life and say, okay, how do I fit building the ark into my life? How do I got to do the laundry, I got to mow the yard, I got to go do the grapevines, because I know he grew wine. He was a grower. I mean, he made wine, so I know he grew stuff. So he's a farmer. He's out there. How do I do this, God, all day long? I can give you an hour, God. I can give you 1 hour a day, God, that I can give you to build this ark. And God's punching on his calculator going, do you know how long that's going to take? Well, I'm going to put my 3 sons to work and my wife. They can give you a little bit of time too. And maybe they'll marry off. And do you know how long that's going to take? What's going to happen is, Noah, you're going to have to make this your life and everything else revolve around this. This is that important. This is that important. And so he put his time into it. He put his energy. He put his skills. He had to learn skills. Wouldn't you say you had to learn skills? If you're a gardener and you have to learn to build an ark, you better know how to swing a hammer. You know. Then the other thing is you got to go buy a hammer. So he had to work. So he's probably having to work and build. Work and build. Work and build. Yeah. And maybe their family vacation was all around that. I'm thinking to myself, they had a family vacation. Where are we going to go? Oh, we're going to go to the Redwood Forest. It's going to be great. We're going to go to Redwood Forest, and we're going to spend some time there, and all those daughter-in-laws are going, finally, we get a break. They take the camper, hook it up to the car, they drive out to the Redwood Forest, they spend a day there camping. Noah says, why don't we cut down a couple of these trees? They make a good roof. And before you know it, their vacation turned into the part where they're bringing those trees back to build that ark. Can you see this? Noah did something different. He included his family in this process. He included his family in the plans that God had for him. His money, his resources, his energy, his skills, his talent, his time, everything. Noah did something different. He built when the world around him was so selfish, all they wanted to do was destroy. And then that day came where they went in the ark. And God, see, they didn't pull a rope to close the door. God, at some point in time, when all his family got in, all of creation, or whatever he was creating, all the created things of animals and stuff that he brought to Noah, because Noah didn't have time to go rodeo these animals. He's got to build. God brought all these various animals, these various things. His daughter-in-laws were no telling if they were the same tribes. There are all these variations in his family and all this, and he put all that variation right in that ark, and he shut it up. And the flood waters came. Now, here's the thing. If you know that whole country or whole countryside thinks he's crazy, right? Everybody knows Noah, but let me tell you this, just knowing Noah won't get you on that ark. Just knowing Noah didn't get them on the ark, did it? They out there drowning. When the water came and the thing was sealed. He couldn't have opened it if he wanted to. He couldn't have got it up because God sealed it. When the time comes, just knowing Noah is not going to get them on the ark. You're going to have to be part of the family. You're going to have to be part of that God sent. See, when people were destroying, Noah built. And because Noah built, God saved. See, God saved through Noah's actions. God saved Noah. God saved his wife. God saved his children. He saved his children's wives. He saved his family. He saved parts of creation. God saved because Noah built while the rest of the world was destroying. So here's my thing for you. Who's the modern day Noah? Who's the modern day Noah? Got to be one. Well, I'm going to tell you, his name's Jesus. Jesus is the modern day Noah. Jesus was ridiculed, mocked, and told to do things differently. I'm going to do what my dad said. Going to do what I'm told. What God tells me to do, I'm going to do it. He walked faithfully with God. He was blameless among men, like Noah was. You couldn't hold anything against Jesus. And he walked in faith. Faithfully walked with audacious faith to walk with God every day. Jesus is the modern day Noah. So what's the modern day ark? The church. And you are the planks that God is using to build that. See, this church isn't this nice wood in this room here. It's not the air conditioning. It's not the drum set. It's not the overheads. It's not any of that. You are the church. You are a part of the family. And when you give your life to Christ, when you accept Christ as your Savior, you join, you partner with Noah, and you become part of his family. You partner with Jesus. And then you know what we do when we partner with Jesus? We do what he does. We build an ark. We build the church. And we don't gripe and complain about who God sends to us. You got tattoos? Come on. You got a rough past? Come on. You've been divorced? Come on. You living together? Come on. You sleeping? Come on. You gay? Come on. You straight? Come on. You got addictions? You got issues? Come on. Because if that's who God is calling to the church, and that's who we're going to use to build this church. And that's where we need to be as followers of Jesus Christ, as a part of the family of God. That's how we are used in God's plan. Some of us are spending so much time going out there to change that culture. You just need to be you. You need to be part of the family and live that part of your life in this world, and they will see you and follow you to the boat. Got to invite them. Got to invite them because they're going to be hanging around. Remember? Some of them's family's going to be telling them, you ain't going to go with that boy, you ain't going to go to the fair with him. You ain't connecting up with that, they're crazy. And that's what a lot of us are being called right now. Because we want to be different. We don't want to destroy anymore. Are you tired of destroying? Are you tired of being so selfish and so self-centered? It's all about you and not about this great vision that God's have, because it's coming. Ready or not, here it comes. Jesus is our modern day Noah. And he invites us to be a part of his family to build his ark, the church. You see, the things that we ought to be doing is saying to the world, we're here for you. And then be there for them. We need to let God's Word be alive in us to where people can see that power. We are part of the family who have in our heritage, who have in our history, people being raised from the dead, particularly Jesus Christ. We need to stop talking about the church and start being the church. And we need to stop talking about the family of God and start being the family of God. So as the band comes forward to lead us in our last song, you reflect on why you're here. I want you to reflect on what God might be calling you to do. On the back of your cards is those suggestions that you might want to do this week. There's several things, and you can check those off if you haven't filled out your card. That you may want to put something else up there. You may want to put in the prayer area, rather than praying for somebody else, preacher, can you pray for me? Because I'm tired of being a destroyer. I want to be a builder, but I've never held a hammer before. Preacher, you don't know what I did last night. You don't know what I did yesterday. Let me tell you, I don't think all them young'uns of his was all perfect. But that was family. And you need to quit eyes and hiding yourself from the family that God has protected us or provided us with. My wife and I have lived by a small covenant. Family is family. Always. Always. It frustrates my children to no degree that as over the course of their time as they've dated and they get really close to people they date, that Jody and I take them in as part of our family. And then after a while, they don't date anymore. They break up, and that's just a part of the dating process. But then they're like, you can't talk to that person anymore. It's like, that ain't the way it works here. People are going to come, people are going to go. People are going to be there for you, and sometimes they're not. But your family. And if you live in one that's not like that, then here, God's created one that's a family to be there for you, even when we don't know what to do. So during this last song, I want you to reflect on what God might be calling you to do, what He might be calling you to stop destroying. Maybe some of you are destroying your own life by some of the choices that you're making. Maybe He's telling you, stop this lifestyle. Stop this sin. For some, He may be saying, stop standing still and grab a hammer and a saw and start building people up. And let them in my doors.